It's been a long process getting to where we are. We have with RMD and right-of-way divisions, we have a succinct collaborative venture going here, and it's proved to be very fruitful for the taxpayers of Texas. In the last year, we've moved the Houston District Office complex at $25 million, possibly at $28 million for Bull Creek. So they will have $100 million in their coffers back to the citizens and for operations of the department very quickly. From the district standpoint, the first thing you'd want to know is how does it affect your district. For a number of decades, as Jess said, we ran in a very reactive stage where typically the scenario was a landowner or a developer would identify a piece of property he thought would be good for him to develop. They would contact their local politicians or a select group of ex-legislators who would contact the district engineer, who would then declare this property surplus, and they would move through the process. We were probably the only venture in any capitalized nation where owning the property free and clear, we allowed someone to identify the property they wanted to own, to get the appraisal of that property, the survey for that property, and come to us and say, sell me this property that I identified for this price. And we said, sure, where do we sign? That's been reversed with this process. We're now in a proactive instead of a reactive phase, where we are actually getting market value for the property, in many cases sometimes above market value. We don't have to sell, but the pressure for districts should be taken off your back. You're not forced in that situation because actually the districts can't declare the property surplus. They can just identify that it's no longer needed for a transportation project in the foreseeable future. It's not really declared surplus until it crosses the governor's desk for signature. So in that realm, we've actually moved forward by leaps and bounds to totally reverse the process. It hasn't been seamless. There was a period a year ago when we were just starting where there was a lot of stuff that was clogged up in the pipeline for a number of months until RMD got their feet on the ground and various procedures were set up to make it work. But I can say now from a line manager standpoint, the process works very, very well. There's not tens but hundreds of millions of dollars to be brought back into state coffers as part of this venture, and we look forward to many, many years of cooperation. From the district standpoint, do you have any questions for the right-of-way side of it at all? I didn't think you would, but I thought I would ask. Yes.
Mitigation banks, Texas, several down in southeast Texas. Any plans on whether it could be kept, disposed, or you only need so much, and in some parts of the state you probably need more mitigation or wetland banks or things that they don't exist. Texas needs to go buy them.
Right. The division hadn't been approached. I don't know if Jess has or not.
Make sure you repeat the question.
I'm sorry, the mitigation banks, possibly the disposal of mitigation banks for.
Well, because for this, they kept it perpetuity, like Parks and Wildlife might be the best custodian
Right.
of those versus.
Well, it's something that we haven't addressed. We haven't addressed it directly with those mitigation banks, but I would assume that would be something that we would want to evaluate. Is it something that does TxDOT have enough that we?
Certain parts of the state you have enough, and other parts of the state you have enough.
Okay. We have looked at certain land that has caves on the property. We're doing a cave survey, and if we find caves on that property, it may be worth more to TxDOT to keep that cave rather than, because if we hit one building a road, we can go ahead and mitigate to that cave, where if you don't already have that banked, it'll cost, well, you're really caged up. They're going to charge you millions for that. They know you need it. So that would be something, we'd have to look at evaluation at, and something we would lean on. We'd work with the district where it's at and the subject matter experts in that area. Say, do you have any excess? If it's something that there is, you think, a possible, available amount, it's something we'd love to talk about.
But I think it's a priority more than the custodial care. They're looking for a property they can turn for a profit at this point in time. Custodial care would certainly be long-term, but right now it's pretty much Keynesian economics. I mean, it's short run. They need to turn a lot of money and a lot of property in rather short time. I'm very excited about the leasing program. We we get in a couple of $1 million a year from leases of state right-of-way right now. We could very easily quintuple that in a matter of years. Because again, we have not been proactive. People have come to us saying, may I lease this? I mean, anywhere from a bait shop stand to parking underneath highways. But with Beverly running an active leasing program now and actually negotiating the lease, the vast portion of our leases for the last 20 years have not been renegotiated. We've actually had lessees that have upped their own rents because they felt bad, when they turned it into us. So now with a whole new true capitalistic approach to it and a private sector mentality to it, she can use her skills for negotiation. We can not only increase that volume of leases we already have on the ground, but the potential for leasing of state right-of-way is virtually unlimited. Virtually unlimited. I personally would like to see a solar panels running all the way across West Texas, and Bob.
Could you speak to the broker situation there? How are y'all going to do that? You're going to have a broker in the mix representing the state?
They all do it for free.
Yeah, right.
That's
that is exactly what we have. They represent the state. However, the state doesn't pay commission, so the commission is added to the sale price of the property.
So how do you get on that list?
We had an RFP out for it this spring.
It would be hard to move to a private sector mentality of maximizing the assets of the state without the consideration of somebody's got to pay for some top flight brokerage firms. The CBRE experiment, which is not experiment, it was a reality. When they went to El Paso to start with, they identified several dozen different potential commercial sites that could be high dollar. Once it went through the filter all the way down to can it should be used for transportation projects, et cetera, all the way down to the bottom, we ended up with less than 5, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But it took private sector mentality and engineering to come in with those type of philosophies to say, this is what we've identified. Now you run through the bureaucracy and see what you really got left in the funnel that you can actually market for some kind of dollars. And they're doing the same thing in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and other major metroplexes will follow. So it's not a short-term deal.
And along that line, when we go out looking for properties, we'll see, 8-acre jug handle or 10-acre jug handle, and the district will need that for expansion of a road or a detention area. Now we have the ability to, we understand the need, and that's first priority is the highway use. And but we've got the ability to come in and with private surveyor contracts and take everything the district needs to widen the road plus some additional right-of-way and section that out and sell what we won't need of the 8 acres because we don't need to hold on to an 8-acre tract for a 3-acre expansion. And so we can do that proactively working with the districts.
And talking to futurists, any futurist worth his salt will look and tell you in 30 or 40 years you would not believe what type of commercial, private sector, government sector type of advertising things that can occur that we wouldn't even fathom today. The questions that we laugh about today might be a reality in 30 years. Why doesn't every TxDOT truck that we have not have a drink Coca-Cola sign on the side of it? How much money could that generate per year? The list is endless. There's many countries that use bridge supports and things like that as advertising. We have a bunch of overlaying federal and state rules, so that would not allow that in our tenure as right-of-way professionals. But for the future, who knows what it holds? Maximizing the state's assets and their value will be paramount in the future as states continue to suffer through economic times, and the cost of building roads and maintaining roads only increases.
How does HBA affect that?
Well, that's what HBA would be one consideration right now. That would not be allowed under the HBA program. But having said that, we have a pilot program in TxDOT now, not in the right-of-way division, but in traffic, where they're considering the use of dynamic message boards. Basically, these message boards being paid for the installation and maintenance by private contractors in state right-of-way, using these signs for our typical use for natural disasters, emergencies, silver, amber alerts, etc. During the downtime, instead of black boards, they would be running advertisement at a static message very similar to the same rules we have for our LED signs that the state would permit right now. The FHWA gave us clearance for that pilot. It's not run through the right-of-way division, but that one little act, as simple as it sounds and as under the radar as it sounds, could have national level consideration for states as they see what kind of profit can actually be gained from these type of things. Certainly the Highway Beautification Act would be a major consideration in whether that could be done or not, because it all have to be public bid. For one thing, you can't just select a company to do that. Is there elimination of the small business person in this attempt? If you have, say, 20,000 signs along the roadways, and you have the vast portion being owned by major companies, 3 or 4 out of the 1,300 licensees, would the ability to bid on something like having advertising, that monopoly on state right-of-way, be fair to small businesses? Who knows? That's to play out over legislative sessions to come. But the Coca-Cola on the trucks is a good idea, don't you think? I mean, how much would that be worth? I can see cell towers with Starbucks, you know. Anything else? Yes, sir.
The idea of increasing your asset value for real estate, does that include affecting properties?
Example.
Groundwater contamination under a tract of
It would have to. It would have to.
So how would you address that if you were trying to sell that to maximize that?
That's we need to make sure you
I'm sorry. The question was environmental issue and well sought. How would we protect like ground water runoff, groundwater contamination, et cetera, on property we sell? We wouldn't have any more control on it once we actually sold the deed to it. But the property used for the individual's consideration would play into the normal ordinances or development scenarios. The classic case is the Bull Creek property, prime property in Austin. It's right now basically a cemetery and open roads and a few textile offices and just rolling pasture land, some trees and running water. The environmental impacts for us would not be considered. It would in the development stage. The city of Austin would control that just like they would anything else. So that's the same scenario any surplus property we would have environmentally.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if you were thinking in terms of risk management strategies for prevention of those kind of issues or identification of those so that you understand what you're talking about.
Good question.
Well, we do get the environmental site assessment phase ones, in the due diligence, and we look at the recognized environmental conditions on those. I think what your question is how do we prevent any future liability after we sell it?
Or are you taking steps to increase your current asset value by protecting it or take some other mitigating action?
Also talk about being a good steward. Yeah.
Right. Actually, yes, case-by-case basis. We were looking at some property that might be surplus we might sell in Arlington. And phase one, we got a phase one, and on a lot of these properties there were tanks on there before that have been removed. And in a case like that, we would consider any mitigation that is recommended off of phase one. We haven't ran into a situation where it was recommended yet, but something like that, we have the ability to mitigate if that would increase the value to the department. If, hey, we could sell it for X, but it would cost us Y to do it, maybe it might make sense to go ahead and do it.
I think it's fair to say on the part of the department that everything we could do to mitigate those type of damage or potential damages would be done, much like our saltwater pipeline leases that were forced on us by legislation. Good or bad, it's not the problem. The question is, how do we do it? And then through the right-of-way, working through the right-of-way and the engineering divisions, we decide that, well, the legislature is particularly talk about the disposal of saltwater pipeline water. How about the permitting for the water where they get it from? That's not part of that bill. But during the implementation of this process, our staff has come up with maybe we ought to start checking on the permit and make that part of the process. So just a typical good stewardship and the fiduciary relationship that's required of us with citizens everywhere. Yes, sir.
Is it strictly like 100% surplus, or is there going to be surplus portions,
they'll maximize it and they'll go both ways, unless I'm overspeaking.
No,
overstating.
that's right. We'll evaluate everything on a case-by-case basis, and every piece is a little different, so we will pursue the disposition strategy that fits that particular piece of property.
Also, from our marketing standpoint, there might be a 7-acre tract that's identified. Maybe it's not best that we sell that as a 7-acre tract. Maybe we should consider dividing that up and selling it for several 2-acre tracts. The highway frontage being more expensive, and the farther back, just like you would as a private developer. You know, what's worth more, and how do we maximize the value of it?
And we get invaluable feedback from the real estate brokers and professionals out there that, you know, look at it, deal with that every day, have for years. And so, you know, this piece of property, maybe you sell the back side of it to an anchor store and keep some front to do ground leases on, something along those lines. Just in that first stage, the first stages of identification and discovery and marketing, we really evaluate any different direction that we can go with these properties in order to optimize the use.
Any other questions at all? Want to talk football? Thank you.
Thank you.